the Rail and Maritime Trade Union, Lee Cooper. Now Lee, again, a significant representative of workers, is actually going to be standing in Longford on behalf of TUSC, and I'm going to ask Lee if he can talk to us about the issues facing RMT members and TUSC. Thanks very much, Lee.
Good evening. You have to forgive me if I have a brain freeze. It's my first time speaking to such a large audience. As Judy explained, I'm the branch secretary of the RMT in Coventry. I was asked specifically to discuss the recent events at CityLink because of its local Coventry connections. But before I do that, I'd just like to offer my solidarity on a personal level and from my branch and from my union to Nick and the FBU for their continuing struggle. Thank you very much. As Judy explained, I'm standing in Longford ward where I live. I've worked all my working life in Coventry. Been a member of the RMT for 28 years, but was only elected to branch secretary in November. Those who know the history of TUSC will know that the RMT was involved right at the foundation of the late great Bob Crow being the moving force behind its formation, and it's a history the RMT holds proud in helping to form workers' movements to give them a political voice. Now, as I explained, I've been asked to speak specifically on the events concerning the CityLink fiasco, because it can only be called a fiasco, an example of crony capitalism, and what I call vulture capitalism, because that's the only way you can explain what they did. They walked in, paid £1 for a company, stripped it to the bone, walked away, and left the taxpayer to pick up the redundancy bill, while hard-working contractors and self-employed drivers will be looking to see 2 pence in the pound of the money that they've lost. Employees who worked hard to meet the targets and get the work out in the run-up to Christmas are still owed overtime and normal wages for that period. What help did we get from the government? When the RMT demanded or requested a meeting with Vince Cable to try and achieve some sort of rescue plan, he said he would see them in the new year, while we all know what happened on New Year's Eve. My first indication, personally, that there was any problem was Christmas Eve, when I was warned to check my emails, because at that point I hadn't even took up the post of branch secretary. At that point I was just an ordinary member, but I was warned to look at my emails, because there was one there from Nick Cash, the General Secretary, to say that he'd had the company in Unity House that afternoon, where they had finally admitted that they were insolvent. They'd gone insolvent 2 days previously, but had carried on trading illegally. They'd been in talks with insolvency experts as early as November. So the company knew there was a problem, but they just wanted to rake in as much money as they could, as long as they could, knowing full well that when they folded, they'd structured the company in such a way that the main creditors were actually themselves. Right at the top of the list of who gets paid first was Better Capital and John Moulton. Now, John Moulton, the man who donated £500,000 to one of the government parties, are we surprised that the government won't launch an inquiry? I'm not. As I said, in the meantime, hard-working employees and private contractors have been left paying the price. The taxpayers picked up the redundancy bill. In Coventry alone, it was 279 people lost their jobs. Nationally, it was approaching 3,000. There was a late bid to try and rescue the company, which the union did consider to be a serious bid. But strangely enough, Ernst & Young, the official administrators, said that it wasn't a reasonable bid because it offered no money up front and significantly undervalued the assets of the company. I'll remind you of a point I made a few moments ago. John Moulton's Better Capital paid £1 for that company. Who's undervalued the assets of the company? He did apologise though. He said he was sorry for the effect it was having on the workforce and contractors. He wasn't sorry enough to make sure they got paid first though. He wasn't sorry enough to make sure they got paid everything they were owed. The taxpayers picked up the bill. Is the truth that no real effort was made to save the firm and the jobs because the vulture capitalists who caused the collapse were also the main creditors and at the top of the list to be paid? I think so. But more recently we found out they're not the only vultures involved in this sorry case. Ernst & Young, the official administrators, have been paid up to the end of January £1.7 million for handling the collapse of CityLink. Their lowest paid advisor on the case is being paid £250 an hour. Meanwhile, I had a phone call New Year's Eve as I was getting ready to go out from an employee of CityLink in one of their northern depots, not one of my branch members, a man I'd never met before, never spoken to. He found my number through Facebook. At his wit's end, a lone parent, 2 young girls at home, not sure where his next paycheck was coming from. And that story is repeated up and down the country, time and time again. The contract drivers, a lot of them had previously been employed by CityLink, but had been encouraged, if you can use that word, blackmailed I think, into taking up a lease vehicle and going self-employed. They've got no pay as of yet for the work they carried out in December, and are likely to see 2 pence in the pound. The cosy relationship between those crony capitalists and the political elite and the way the law is stacked against ordinary working people is just one reason why we need people in Parliament that will stand up for us and not the vested interest of a man who donated £500,000 to the Tory party. That's why I think we need TUSC. So thank you all again for attending this evening. The turnout is astounding, and I'll hand back over to Julie.